let me wait, let me wait. And again, that's hindsight. Hindsight, I'm George Soros, but that doesn't help me today. So I think the thing Paul Tudor Jones said, and I'm not trying to glaze all these other traders. You got to find your own path that works for you. Um, but Paul Tudor Jones says the mistake he sees almost every new trader make is their position size is too much. I knew a guy who worked for Steve Cohen a long time ago, early days of Steve Cohen when there was only 50 or 100 people. Okay, and he had a 20-year track record. Okay, Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4, and this is his track record, and this was the year. Okay, now people have monthly track records and stuff like that, but the way he sort of liked to present his track record was like this. Right, so let's say I made 5% this quarter, I made 3% this quarter, I made 6% this quarter, I made 4% this quarter, I was up 20% this year. You get it? Okay. And this guy is, he's well known in the hedge fund circles. He's not too well known outside of it. He's been retired since he was 40. Um, I worked out at this guy's office briefly. Um, he was a friend. Like, we sort of just don't talk anymore. Not no bad reason. I'm sure he would have no problem hearing from me today. Um, he's a good enough guy. No bad blood. Nothing bad happened. We just sort of grew apart. Um, so anyway, the guy. Here's the thing about this guy's track record, right? So this is his 20-year track record. Every single quarter for 20 years was positive. Every single quarter. 20 years. Never had a down quarter. And there were plenty of recessions and depressions and things like that in that quarter. So you might say, okay, sure, he's a great investor. There's a lot of those, right? But here's the thing about this that's special. Obviously, the track record itself is special. It's pretty rare. Very rare to have that kind of track record. There are other people that have that track record. But here's what's interesting about this guy. He never had leverage once. And this was really weird. I worked at his office, so I kind of got to look at his portfolio sometimes and talk to him about this stuff. He always had half of his portfolio at least in cash. And in fact, he often had 70% of his portfolio in cash. So there's many ways to skin the cat. When a lot of people take leverage, they're thinking in their head, well, I need to do this because I need to come up. My account's X dollars and I want it to be 2X dollars. Well, of course we all want that. But the problem is, as you make mistakes, those mistakes will be magnified. This guy, no, he wasn't short. He was pretty neutral. This guy made a trade. He was sure he was right on a short-term basis and a long-term, whatever. He was mostly a short-term trader. Exactly, Kamala's got it. He only swung at perfect pitches. And if you only swing at perfect pitches, or what you think are perfect pitches, I mean, you will basically, the ones you get wrong, because you will get them wrong anyway, right? You're just going to get stuff wrong if you're a trader. Buffett doesn't necessarily get a lot of stuff wrong, but Buffett makes two investments a year. So it's easy for Buffett. But this guy's making, 100 trades a day. Maybe like, 30 to 100 trades a day. And, Kramer was a lot like this too. Kramer would buy a stock in the morning, and by the afternoon, if anything felt off, he would just sell it and just say, I'm out, I'm too nervous. He couldn't take any amount of money as a loss, basically. Any position was not working for him, he's out. I have a very different strategy. I'm more like an Appaloosa or a Tiger where I'll take all the pain in the world, bring it on. I don't care. And that strategy works too. But the question is, if your strategy isn't working for you, think about a different strategy. Think about, okay, let me take much smaller positions. Let me see if I can grow my account that way. Because at the end of the day, as long as you're growing your account, that's what matters. You just want to avoid shrinking your account. The rate of compound return will take care of everything else, the law of compound returns. But if you're shrinking your account, you can't do much. You can't become rich, that's for sure. So I think that, you got to find a way to grow your account. And if you've tried and tried and tried again, taking these big swings, trying to be a hero, and it's not working, try smaller swings and try a strategy where you automatically, any position costs you whatever the number is for you. It could be $100, it could be $1,000, it could be $1 million. Whatever number makes sense for you, you just say, I'm out at this amount. I don't care what it is. Now, of course, if you have complex positions like hedges and things like that, you probably want to think about how to make this method work for you, including some of those things. You make adjustments. You make it work for you the way that makes sense, but you don't want to be sitting there, frustrated and then repeating the same thing that got you frustrated in the first place. That's, the definition of insanity, I guess, according to Einstein or somebody else. You keep repeating the same thing and you hope that that's going to change somehow, change your outcome. You're going to have the same outcomes. Now, the funny thing is, in different markets, different strategies will have different outcomes. So you might say, well, I used to do this and sometimes it worked. Well, sure. Mean reversion works really well in certain markets. Trend following works really well in some other markets. And many other little things like that. So, I think that to find a system that works well all the time is very hard. Very, very hard to do. And part of it is mastering your own psychology. I mean, what system are you compatible with psychologically? But I think, maybe the number one thing about any system is that you just have to be comfortable with its rules. What you probably don't want to do is say, well, I'm a trader who will fight a position, and I'll double down as it goes up. But then you don't want to be the guy that then starts scalping for quick profits. You sort of have to be consistent. You can't take one part of a strategy and then decide that you're going to take something that's diametrically different for your strategy from Monday to Tuesday. You have to be really consistent and say, this is how I do battle with the market. I'm a trader that, has really tight stop losses, and I try to get as much gain as I can, but I always obey the stop loss. That's my thing. Or you could say a strategy like mine, which is I try to find my true north, my lodestar. I have my opinion about what a company's worth, where it's going to end up, and that's the North Star I follow. I don't care what else happens. The market's just noise. It's nonsense. My lodestar, my true north is what matters. But then you can't mix them up and say, well, my true north matters, but when it's up 5%, I get it. That doesn't make any sense. Because you'll never make it. It'll sort of always be, the market will always be chopping you up if you act that way. Every 5% in the stock is going to make you nervous. It's going to drive you crazy. And it's not going to work. So you really have to find your strategy that makes sense. Other people say, I need an edge. I need an informational edge. Okay, well, you're playing with fire with that one. But that method does work if you can get informational edge. So, you don't need insider info per se, but, you get close to the line. And, it's a game some people want to play. There's other people that say, I just want arbitrage. I don't think, stoicism is good for some people, but for other people, you might want to be so the guy I was talking about with the perfect track record, this guy was well known for being a very loud, very angry screamer on the trading desk. He was a perfectly nice guy outside of the trading desk. But this guy also worked for Michael Steinhardt, who's the godfather of screaming at people. And, basically, Steinhardt would yell at people. Kramer worked out of Steinhardt's office for a little while. Steinhardt was like the god of hedge funds back then. And so Steinhardt was one of the pillars of hedge funds. And so, anyway, Steinhardt would just start just screaming at the top of his lungs at anybody and anyone around for a small loss. And I think the guy's super rich, right? The reason for screaming is not because he's mad at losing the money, even though it might seem like it. I think the reason for screaming was just to get the loss internalized as a mistake and cut the mistake and move on. Because if you start to accept the losses as a trader, you're basically cooked. And that's kind of I think the philosophy that this guy I'm mentioning, I won't say his name, as I respect his privacy, he's a pretty private guy. Steinhardt especially, and then also Kramer and many others, that was their strat, was to sort of lose their minds, screaming, yelling, breaking things, just to reinforce that discipline, I think, that I can't lose money. I can't lose money in any trade. It's terrible when I lose money on any trade. So if I'm up 30% for the year, a good way to be up 10% for the year is to start accepting losses. And I accept losses, but that's because that's my strategy, is that I'm willing to accept losses in the short run for gains in the long run. That's not a trader strategy. A trader strategy is I'm never going to take losses. I'm never going to have a drawdown because I'm always going to be out. Now, a trader has to take some amount of pain, but a trader, the way I'm describing it, a Steinhardt-like trader, is not willing to take much pain. They're not willing to have a month where they're down more than 1 or 2%. I'm willing to take almost all the pain until I get proven right. And again, that's a very Tiger perspective, but Tiger had its pros and cons too. So, it all depends on your strategy. A lot of traders will have a hard time making a 50% return for the year because they're scalping smaller moves. They're taking less risk, really. Guys like me don't have that big of a problem, but we also might have a year where we're down 20, 30, 40%. So it's all in you. It's all in you trying to figure out what you want to do, where you want to be, how you want to do it. And I think the number one rule is stick to your strategy. Once you start fucking around and doing things inconsistent with your strategy, you have a problem. Now, listen, if you are shorting NVIDIA and Palantir and you're buying cassava, you're not going to make money no matter what your strategy is, right? So you still have to have alpha. You still have to be right. I mean, that's never going to change. So skill makes things a lot easier. And I think that's the other thing people don't do that you may want to do is do simulations and back tests. Now that automatically scares people. Say, I don't know how to do that. Well, you can actually do it with Excel without doing any fancy work. Your work can get fancier and fancier as you sort of learn how to do this. But you could do it like this. Say, all right, how many trading days are there in a year? There's 250 trading days in a year. How many trades do you make per day? Let's say you make 50 trades a day. You're going to make 12,500 trades in a year. Okay? Trade journals are great. Yeah. No, trade journals are great. The only problem with the trade journal is how much time it takes to maintain. But other than that, I would recommend them. Well, I just got a lot of positions I have to manage here. Just give me a minute while I try to figure out how to do that. Okay, probably need to buy some of this. Hold on. So this isn't a back test. This is more of a simulation or a calculation. But you can make this as sophisticated as you want or as unsophisticated as you want. But you probably can get most of the point without much of hard work. And one of the best things you can do is look at your trading results for the year any given year, and tax time is a good time to do that anyway. All right, so let's say this is it, 12,500 trades a year. There's a lot of ways to do this, but one fun way to sort of do it is say, okay, I'm going to do winners, washes, and losses. Okay, so let's assume that you have, well, we can even make some assumptions here. 35% are going to be winners. 30% are going to be losers. 30% are going to be a wash. Okay. I mean, if you're market neutral, I'm not sure there's any given year you could say everybody made money or not, but regardless. So what's the average size of my trade? Well, I don't know. Let's say my account size is $1 million. And the average size of my trade is 2%. My average trade is $20,000. Dollar size of trade. And then you could also have, okay, win rate. And my win rate is 50 basis points. Or my win amount or something, because we know what the win rate is. And so number of win trades is this. And it's kind of amazing, right? Like you with a $1 million account, you may make $87 million of trades. 20,000 bucks, 4,000 trades. Yeah, sounds right. Dollars in wins. And how much did you make? $400,000. Now, if you only had wins, you'd have a nice 40% return. The washes are, you don't even have to do them, I don't think, right? Give or take. And now the loss rate. Well, same concept here. And these are losers independent of longs or shorts. So you lost $70 million. You had $75 million in losing trades. And you lost $375K. And you made 6% for the year. Right? So if you're okay with this, this is like an implicit DCF. This is what you have to do. And you can see that you say, well, this isn't that good. This is not what I want. This is not risky enough. I don't want to make 6%, right? So now you have to decide, well, what are you going to change? What happens if you do 100 trades a day? Well, now your profit doubled. What happens if you do 150 trades or 300 trades a day? Well, your profit's going up quite a lot. Okay. Well, you say, I'm only human. I can do 100 trades a day. All right, well, something else has to change if you want to be a big winner. Okay? You could take more risk, make double the size of your trades. Now you're up 25% for the year. Okay? You squeeze out some more wins, make this 36 instead of 29. Your profits are even higher. Obviously these things will impinge on each other. Make a lot of stop losses for the losses and let the winners ride. Now you're really killing it. If you can do that, you triple your money. But it's very, very hard to do. Look at the impact even 10 basis points has. 5 basis points makes a huge difference. So doing this just lets you kind of have a sense for okay, what do I actually need to accomplish in my trading? Do I need to trade more? Do I need to trade less? Do I need to make more when I make? Do I need to, hold my positions longer? All this stuff. Yeah, of course you can't have a job and do this at the same time. No, you should drive a truck and trade your money at the same time. Work at McDonald's and go trade at the same time.